Still there it is. Okay. That was a wild intro. Hey guys, we are Bone Knows Health, and we are joined by Rick Olderman, talking about his new book, Pain Patterns. And Rick, how many other books have you published?
This is number 9.
Wow. Yes. Very, very prolific. I think prolific becomes the word. And there's a theme there of the fixing you, right? Back pain, and then you have knee pain.
I have 6 Fixing You books for different areas of the body. And then I have a Solving the Pain Puzzle book. And then I wrote a book with Bob and Brad, and that's called Top 3 Fix. And then this is number 9.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
How many are we looking? Are we going to hit 20, 25?
No, I hopefully this is the last one in this genre anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're going to switch over to sci-fi, or?
No, I've got other ideas in my head.
All right. Well, pain patterns, definitely a huge topic. Anyone listening to this show probably interested in some version of pain as a clinician, as a patient. So tell us again, why all these different approaches to it. Is this Pain Patterns new book coming out? We'll have the link in the show notes. Is this just a different way to approach things? Love to hear kind of what the impetus is and what's special about this book.
Yeah, well, it's a much different way to approach pain than is taught in school, and that most practitioners follow to understand pain. However, it's consistent with all my other books. However, now I'm explaining why I'm presenting that information like I'm presenting that information. So Pain Patterns talks about, basically, there are 3 patterns of problems that are causing almost all back, sciatic, or SI joint pain. And these combine different areas of research from movements research, primarily conducted by Dr. Shirley Sahrmann out of Washington State University, fascial research by Thomas Myers and Robert Schlepp, and then neuroanatomical research by Dr. Thomas Hanna. So the interesting thing is, typically in medicine, in research, we all stay in our own silos. So no one knows what the other person's doing. And so none of these 3 research areas were aware of the other areas of research that were also finding the same 3 patterns of problems that they highlighted in all of their research. So from movement standard in Dr. Shirley Sahrmann's world, she identified 3 patterns called extension problems, flexion problems, and rotation problems. And this is from a movement perspective. These are movement impairments that we have that cause pain. In fascial research, Thomas Myers discovered that there are superhighways of fascia running through our bodies: superficial back line, front line, deep front line, lateral line, and spiral lines. These closely correspond to the patterns of movement Dr. Shirley Sahrmann discovered in her movement research. And then from a neuroanatomical standpoint, from a reflex patterning standpoint, we have startle reflex, Landau reflex, and cross-extensor reflexes that we're all born with and never leave our body. And these 3 reflex patterns correspond almost exactly to the fascial patterns and the movement patterns. So what I've done in this book is put it all together to explain why we have chronic pain, why typically in medicine we're missing aspects of why we're having chronic pain. And then that's the first half of the book. And the second half of the book functions as a workbook. So people can actually work through, hey, what patterns do I have? And then other tests and exercises to discover, why am I even having these patterns?
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. I appreciate you taking us through that. I'm excited to get my hands on it and take a look. There's so many different, schools of thought. And I have this post on my social media where I go through, like, here's the 77 like different schools that I've gone through. And there's, you can list them all out, whether it's St. Augustine or Michigan State or, the list goes on and on. There's the fireside chats over here in Steamboat Springs. Have you been over there with, what's the FOI?
No.
That one? No. I can't think of the guy's name right now. But yeah, anyway, the point being that there's just so many schools of thought, and the research, to your point, is so varied and hard to make a sense of it all. You go to an orthopedic surgeon, you go to a pain specialist, you have chronic pain, and they're going to direct you a couple different things. They might say, go try conservative physical therapy. What does your insurance cover? You can try injections. You can try to get a little stronger. You can try to change your lifestyle. You can go to a psychologist. There's all these different things, but again, it's rarely ever put together. So whether we're looking at it from just an orthopedic standpoint, a pathoanatomical kind of pain standpoint, you do an MRI, hey, you have a herniated disc. Let's cut that sucker out, see if that fixes it, which unfortunately we know does not more often than not. So yeah, I think the movement pattern piece, it's still not easy. So I appreciate that this should be moving us in that direction. Is that the hope of publishing something like this? And with your experience with the previous books, moving the field forward, moving your practice forward, to have a little more clarity when someone enters through your practice, or somebody's looking for these answers, to be able to say, hey, here's simpler steps. You can skip getting an MRI. You can skip this pathway. So is that kind of the idea with it? I'd love to, get that sense.
Well, as you know, there are tons of people out there with chronic back pain, sciatic pain, who have been to plenty of practitioners and are still suffering. And so my goal with this book is primarily for those people, is to give them a new way of understanding back pain, sciatic pain, SI joint pain, and to solve it. That's the workbook portion of the book. The difficult part of this one, Bo, is that this is the first time I've tried to straddle the fence between satisfying medical professionals and satisfying lay people. So that's why I broke the book down into two sections. The first section is more the roots of all of this stuff and explaining how I came to all of these conclusions, the science behind it, and so forth. But frankly, I've met a lot of lay people who are fascinated by this type of information too. And to make it easy for them, at the end of each of those chapters, I've put little key takeaway points, like 3 or 4. Hey, just know this, get this from this chapter. That's all you need to know. You don't need to understand myofibroblasts. You don't need to understand transforming growth factor beta 1. You don't need to understand dorsal columns medial lemniscus pathways. You don't need to know any of that stuff to solve your pain. But I'm just showing you the science behind all of this stuff. That's all section 1. So my primary goal is for helping people who are stuck, who have been to all of those practitioners. And you even kind of mentioned before, you can try this, you can try that, you can try the other thing. And I feel like in medicine, and this is borne out in all of the therapists I've trained in my clinic, is that they're just trying things because they don't really understand what is happening. And so I'm hoping that this book can become a framework to understand why what you're doing with a patient is working, and maybe what else you can do along those lines that might help them that you hadn't thought of. Because I feel like in medicine, what we're often doing is throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
It's medical practice. We're practicing.
Right. What if we actually had a larger comprehensive understanding of what's going on here, and where our ideas, all those, that, like you mentioned, that map of all of those courses that you've taken. We've taken those courses because we still haven't found the answer. And I feel like this is providing a skeletal framework for you to understand what's happening, and then insert whatever treatment is working, and understand why that treatment would work or why it wouldn't work. And we can actually make those decisions before we try those treatments, because we understand the pattern of problems this person has in the first place and why that would or wouldn't work.
I'd be remiss to not bring up Stuart McGill. I'm sure you know who he is, but for the listener who might not be familiar, I'd say he's considered, and correct me if I'm wrong, the foremost spine researcher in the world. He's done all sorts of cadaveric studies on mostly pigs, I believe. A few human cadavers, I think. But again, I'd say he's one of the most vocal folks on all the big podcasts, Huberman Lab, and even I think he was on Joe Rogan, things like that. But yeah, Stuart McGill seems to be the guy for back pain. He's written Low Back Mechanics, so kind of sounds similar some of the stuff you have is, again, without going too in depth on his exact system and things like that. And I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that, but also on him, but also maybe where you think he might have gotten some stuff wrong. Again, the big thing that comes out of his, if you Google him right now, you might find the big three. So somebody's in back pain, they'd be doing these bird dogs, side planks, and modified curl ups. Not necessarily wrong. Some people find relief with it, but he also talks about some classification systems within his books of diagnosing for the clinician, but then also has the piece for the patients. So again, I just don't want to start a whole controversy. We're not looking for the clickbait here, social media world of it all. Let's start a fight with him. But I would love to hear how you compare, or where you think maybe some pieces are missing in his world.
Well, I know he's a brilliant researcher, and I know I haven't read his back pain mechanics book yet. So, but I've listened to him on Huberman Lab, and he is a guy who understands the minutia of structure, right? And this is what we're really good at in physical therapy, is digging down into the minutia of things. I think what we're missing, though, is understanding things from a macro standpoint and understanding the general idea of what is going wrong here. And instead, we're trying to test all these little tiny structures and tissues and so forth to see if there's a tear or a strain or whatever in this tiny little tissue. But there's none of those tests, Bo, that are saying, why is that tear or strain happening? And, other than if it's an accident, an athletic accident, or you're working and you fall and you tear something or break something. If we don't have an immediate mechanism that we understand is the cause of that tear, then we really don't understand why those things are happening in the first place. And so what my book is trying to do is show this macro point of view of, hey, this fits into this kind of system of problems. And then the tests that I have in the workbook area explain or show why something is typically happening further up the spine, sciatic pain or whatever. So while I'm not getting into the minutia of tissues and whether a facet joint is rotated this way or that way in the lumbar spine or vertebral or thoracic spine, all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to compete with Dr. Stuart McGill on that kind of stuff. But again, my book is more about understanding the framework where all of this fits in and being able to quickly identify what pattern of problems these people are having and how to solve those, and what are the causes of those problems. It's a little different than Dr. Stuart McGill in that regard.
Okay. Then the other piece to the big pain picture, right? There's the big pain summit that happens down in San Diego every year. A lot of physical therapists love to go there, and you start checking in on what's going on. And again, you get these arguments, people coming from the McKenzie school and the Sarman school, and you get all that back and forth too. Have you happened to be at that pain summit or any of that kind of stuff?
No, I don't want to get into those kinds of arguments about this and that. I once listened to for a half-hour argument between two physical therapists about the same research article. And they were both saying that it was showing two opposite points. And I'm just like, okay, so we can make research show whatever we want it to show. Whatever our belief system is, we're going to mold that research, discussion or conclusion to our belief system. And if it doesn't fit our belief system, then we're just going to cherry pick a different article that does support our conclusions. So that's what I find when I get into a conversation with a lot of people who are involved in research and so forth. This is what happens is they start citing all of these research articles I've never read that prove their points, but they always miss or don't include the research articles that point to other points of view too. So frankly, I just don't see the point. I became a physical therapist to help people, not argue with other researchers and move our profession in one direction or another. That's not my goal.
For sure. Yeah. And from what I've seen of the pain summit, I have not attended myself, but I think that they're trying to bring all those schools together to see what common grounds they could find. That's certainly the best optimistic, benefit of the doubt view of it. But the reason I brought it up actually was to go into more the biopsychosocial model, another big junk term in this whole space of pain, just how much the mind plays into it. There's the Dr. John Sarno, he does a few books. Was the Mind Body Connection is I believe the name of that one. You also have Body Keeps the Score, which I do have back here. That's that orange book right there.
Just got done reading it.
There you go. So yeah, I'd love to hear, especially with those fresh eyes on the book. Just whether your book connects into some of the psychological piece, and what you think of, again, that kind of holding on to trauma necessarily, versus just the concept of going into thinking about how our pain exists. So whatever version of that you want to go into, I'd love to hear. Yeah, especially hearing that you just read Body Keeps the Score.
Sure. So this gets into a blend of the fascial concepts in the book, and as well as the chapter 4, which talks more about our brain and nervous system. All right. So in fascia, we have something called, and by the way, I have encountered several examples of trauma being housed in the body in my clinic. And when I'm working on particular tissues, that trauma is coming up as we are releasing their pain. So there is a connection. And my book, I believe, explains a possible pathway by which this happens. So typically in these kinds of books, we say, oh, the mind, the body is connected. Your pain is due to your trauma, but there's no one that has really explained how that is even happening. And so in my book, I offer a pathway potentially about how this trauma or emotional trauma gets lodged in the body. So it has a lot to do with our fascial system and our neurological system. And so there's a type of fascia called myofibroblasts. Myo refers to muscle. Myofibroblasts have up to 6 times the contractile capacity of regular fibroblasts. And myofibroblasts are laid down in mechanically strained areas of the body. Well, changes in curvature in our spine present automatically a mechanical strain to the body. And also, the difference between our pelvis and our lumbar spine, that's another huge mechanical stressor to the body because of just the difference, the inequity in the size of the pelvis and the lumbar spine. So wherever the pelvis goes, the spine basically has to follow. And the junction between those two objects, a large object and a small object, is going to create stress. So myofibroblasts are laid down in these mechanical stressed areas of the body. The stress could also be coming from how you're using your body, your movement dynamics. So anyway, the interesting thing about myofibroblasts is that they are not activated by neurological impulse. They are activated by chemical impulse, specifically a cytokine called transformer growth factor beta 1, which is released from our body in times of stress, trauma, PTSD, anxiety, things like that. We have higher levels of the cytokine circulating through our bloodstream that then activate the myofibroblasts. The interesting thing about myofibroblasts is that it's not like a neurological activation of muscle. If we want to bend our elbow, our brain says, contract your biceps, that will bend your elbow, right? And when the brain says you're done, relax that muscle, our elbow straightens. And that's a nearly immediate change in our muscle tone, tension, activation, whatever. However, myofibroblasts, because this is more of a chemical type of activation, it is a longer lead into that contraction, and it has a longer tail leading out of that contraction. So myofibroblasts aren't responsible for maybe bending your elbow, but they would be responsible for the tension in your biceps area and your arm area that's also lying underneath I won't say underneath, but is in coordination with the contraction of your biceps muscle. So even if you turn your biceps off, if you have these high levels of cytokines circulating through your bloodstream and you have myofibroblasts deposited in that area, you'll have an underlying tension in that group of muscles because of that myofibroblast prolonged activation.
So is the cure to then release the myofibroblast? What's our terminology here?
Well, the myofibroblasts also have up to 40% sympathetic nerve fiber investment too. So they are very closely associated with pain perception. So the key, first of all, the key is in understanding that myofibroblasts are laid down in areas of mechanical strain in the body. That means that you have to change how you use your body in order to remove mechanical strain from biomechanical standpoint, right? So if you're doing something wrong all the time mechanically, then you're going to build up myofibroblasts in that area to help protect that area. So that's the first key. The second idea would then be also, well, what if we also approach this from the mind standpoint and deal with our anxiety or PTSD or stress that's causing the cytokines to be released in the first place on this steady stream? So we can address it from a movement standpoint to remove mechanical stress. We can approach it from the mind standpoint to remove the trigger for the mechanical stress. And then also from a fascial standpoint, we can do a manual release of something like that to cause it to, a manual release to the fascial system where that's embedded to cause that whole system to start to relax too. So it really just depends on what your testing is showing, that where the stressor is coming from.
So I guess interestingly, connecting some of the dots from my end of, would you say what you're talking about is also why there's a short-term benefit? It's the nervous system regulation of getting a chiropractic adjustment, or even an acupuncture treatment, or even a soft tissue massage, something that's going to allow you to feel a little better. Again, what I forget if you do dry needling or how you feel about it, but the research I was looking through with dry needling is the fibroblasts that get released, but based on including electric stimulation or twisting the needles, release more fibroblasts that are going to last up to 72 hours compared to the chiropractic or the shorter term acupuncture, where it's more superficial, is only lasting a few hours. So I'd love to understand where maybe that fits in. You mentioned the myofibroblasts. They talk about, I think there's a lot of overlap there, if I'm not mistaken, of what you're talking about, and being able to see that under a diagnostic ultrasound type unit. And yeah, I think there's a question in there. Sorry if there was not. I don't know if you have a thought based on what I just rambled.
Well, because we are a multifaceted being, the myofibroblasts being caused by biomechanical stressors. Also, this is a fascial system issue. And also there is a neuroanatomical component to this as well. So there's going to be multiple ways to address that myofibroblast contraction, deposition, and so forth. So this is why when often if you go to a massage therapist, you keep going back and they keep saying, oh man, this thing's tight again. Or back to that chiropractor. Oh, there's that rotator vertebra again. Let's snap that, into place. And or physical therapist, oh, there's that, contracted muscle again. Let's get that to relax. We're all looking at it from different points of view, and there are even more. There's acupuncture. There's all sorts of, psychological, treatments and so forth. So there's all sorts of ways to address this. It's not one or the other. It's all an and situation. But really what you want to do is solve the reason the myofibroblasts are activated in the first place or deposited. And that is solving how you're using your body first to remove mechanical stress to your body and increase suppleness. And then you'll also want to, if you have psychological issues, you'll want to address the, mental aspect of that. But I have found that when you address myofibroblasts from a manual standpoint or any other, musculoskeletal issue, it also relaxes the mind too. So I believe that it goes both ways. The mind is not only affecting the body is affecting the mind. And so calming the body also calms the mind.
Yeah, that's the reason I always have breath work in every single one of my sessions when it's appropriate. I try to get breath work in there to calm that nervous system, reset the nervous system. Folks start with a breathing pattern there. And then, the point of the fibroblasts with something like dry needling is if we're resetting that nervous system, or we're able to change something with a chiropractic adjustment or physical therapy manipulation, whatever language we want to use. The thing I think gets missed, and in the research gets missed, I'd love to hear if you agree with me, is the fact that, again, it sounds like that's, which I appreciate that you're saying we also have to figure out what's the cause and changing and getting rid of hey, it hurts when I do overhead squats in CrossFit. And that's the thing that's making me worse. Well, I want to keep doing CrossFit, or I want to keep running. So can I remove that? I guess not. But the other piece is, can we address the tissue? And maybe we need 6 weeks of rest, but not just rest, but of resetting those fibroblasts and changing some movement patterns of loading. So it sounds like that, again, you're trying to put those pieces together. Very similar, sounds like, to a lot of the things I certainly practice. So I'm excited again to see how it all lines up with the overall philosophy of getting people healthier. That is,
Well,
I appreciate that you said that. That's our goal here. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So I absolutely. But if you can understand the larger patterns of pain that people are having, and then you can start and then do further testing to understand why that pattern of pain is happening. It removes a lot of the guesswork out of treatment, and treatment goes a lot faster because you can work through several different possibilities, all at once if you understand the general pattern that this person is dealing with that's causing their pain. And so that's what I feel. A lot of my treatment isn't about trying things to see if they work. I basically know that they're going to work or not work before I even employ them. It's just a matter of how the patient is doing that exercise that is the unknown. So that's what I feel is beneficial about this type of point of view, is that it removes a lot of the guesswork, and it's much simpler to solve pain. That was one of the most common comments by my new therapist at my clinic. They would come in afraid to work with people with back pain or complex neck pain and all this kind of stuff. But once they understood how the body works as a system, it made things so much simpler yet more comprehensive in their treatment. And so, within months, they were just like, wow, I'm not afraid to do this anymore. And I'm being so successful. And that's because it's taken a lot of the guesswork. We're given a million tests in PT school, right? But we are not given really a framework to think about where those tests fit in to what's causing pain.
No, I love it. I'm excited again for the book to come out, guys. Again, it's Pain Patterns. When is it releasing on Amazon?
I'm hoping around between November 5th and November 11th.
Okay, so in about a week from when we're recording this, if
Yeah.
you're watching this later. So
Yeah, pretty soon.
If you guys are watching this, we're in 2024 for anybody in the future. Rick, I really appreciate your time and pushing just the better, more comprehensive, network of information here. And hopefully, again, we keep improving the complexity that is medical practice. So again, appreciate you being on here, sharing this message. And again, guys, go check out his other 8 books that he has. And then when the 9th one comes out, again, hopefully in a week or so here, go get Pain Patterns. Rick, anywhere else folks can find you, connect with you? Anything else you want to plug before we hop
on? The book is also found on my website, www.rickolderman.com. And one of the nice features of the book is that all the tests and exercises that are in the book are also found as videos on my website. So all you have to do is enter the code in the book and you can watch everything as a video.
Awesome. Love it. Appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out. We'll be respectful of everyone's time here and sign right off. Thanks, Rick. Everyone, hopefully you got 1% better.